Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. The question is, how long will they be able to keep it up? How long until people start waking up to the games? It's all one big con job. I don't know when people are going to realize it. So many struggling people in the lower class keep buying the snake oil, as if these people actually care about you, as if they care about your standard of living or your ability to earn a living wage. How many times is it going to take to realize that that isn't the case at all? As if the events of 2020 weren't enough, the callous nature of it all, shutting down small business, shutting down your ability to earn a living while allowing major corporations to continue as quote essential services. If that wasn't the wake-up call that the working and lower class needed, then really I don't know what is. And I don't know if this is going to convince you either. The current topic of the day, what everyone's talking about, is the ending of Title 42, a Trump-era border policy specifically implemented in 2020, which essentially shut the border down. Well, it's about to expire, and the Biden administration continues to incentivize illegal immigration, and so the message right now to illegal migrants is come on in, it's a damn free-for-all, because that's supposedly the right thing to do, that's the ethical thing to do. Except, of course, as we know, it's not, and it's bad policy that's going to affect the lowest at the economic scale. Most people don't seem to realize it, but that actually might be changing, as a good chunk of these migrants are now being sent to inner city communities in Democrat cities, and well, the reaction was something I really wasn't expecting. Let me show you guys what I mean by that. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, take a look at this viral clip. It's already been viewed over 5 million times, with over 1 million playbacks. Chicago residents are told that 250 illegals are coming to their neighborhood. This is how they reacted.
What's important is that we really establish that this is a humanitarian crisis, and we're here.
South Shore residents responded with resounding rejection.
While this crisis may constitute an emergency for the city of Chicago, it does not constitute an emergency for the South Shore community.
Incoming migrants have overwhelmed district police stations by the hundreds.
It's my turn. It's my turn. Hello.
But city leaders could barely eke out a word of the details about a proposed respite center at the former South Shore High School.
When it comes to the total number of people at South Shore at any given point in time, it is fluid. We'd start with 250, 500.
How could you do that without consulting us?
I am concerned with safety in the area.
But wait a second. I thought being against uncontrolled illegal migration was a Republican thing. I thought it was rooted in racism. I thought Donald Trump was a terrible human being for wanting to secure the border. It's funny how the standard's different when it affects your community. It's funny how the standard's different when it's in your own backyard. The old classic NIMBY situation. Not a big deal if it's happening elsewhere. Not a big deal if it's happening at southern border states. Who cares? Out of sight and out of mind. But the moment it enters your space, your neighborhood, and affects your community, all of a sudden it's the biggest outrage. Wake up. These Democrats claim it's our duty. It's a humanitarian crisis. We have to take care of it. We have to open the border and just continue to accept people into our neighborhoods, mostly in low-income neighborhoods and less affluent neighborhoods. It's good policy. It's the right thing to do. Except it's not. It's not the right thing to do for literally anyone. These illegal migrants are not refugees. They're economic migrants, and they're literally coming to the United States to work, to take jobs, and then not to use that money to boost up the American economy, but to use that money to send it back home. I was actually watching an interview on John Stossel's YouTube channel the other day, where a politician from, I believe, Guatemala, I'll have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure it was Guatemala, claimed that the number one source of income, the number one source of cash coming into the country is from migrant workers in the US sending money back home.
60 million Latin Americans have voted with their feet, and they live in the United States, and in cases like my country, they are responsible for the number one income of dollars that we have back home. Remittances sustain our country.
People in the United States sending money back to Guatemala.
Yeah. That's the number $1 income that we have.
It's literally an extraction of wealth, and that money is generally, I mean not totally, but generally attained through unskilled labor or low-level jobs, or even mid-level jobs in some cases. Well, I don't think it's an extreme policy position, or an extreme standard, a racist standard, to want those jobs to go to actual American citizens in lower-income neighborhoods. I don't think it's racist for that money to stay in the domestic economy, helping generate cash flow and boosting up the local economy. Democrats care so much much about the little guy. So much that they want to continue uncontrolled illegal migration, bringing in cheap labor essentially to take your job. The reaction that you saw earlier, that reaction of total outrage, is the only appropriate response. It's the classic South Park joke.
They took our jobs! They took your jobs! They took your jobs too! They took our jobs!
It's silly, it's from South Park, but it's also true. And what else is true is that Democrats aren't these almighty, virtuous, compassionate people who have your best interests at heart. Democrats just want to import two things. Of course, lifelong Democrat voters, and secondly, cheap labor. It's almost like modern-day slavery, and it's not like they're scared to admit it.
To create crisis at the border so that people come here and they are always subject to being illegal workers. And we need to do something about that in this country. Those folk who are coming across are the ones who are helping to put food on our table. Without them, we're not able to eat. If you turn them away, if all of them were turned away, and then this legislation passed, making it easier to get at people who are already here legally, and you have no immigration, then we would have no food on our plates. We would have nobody taking care of the building, the construction of our homes. We would have nobody cleaning up in the hospitals.
Representative Hank Johnson literally saying, these folks are coming across the border, and if they didn't, who would help put food on our table? Without them, we would not be able to eat. You heard it from the Democrat himself. We would not be able to eat. Food would not be able to be served on the table if it were not for illegal migrants working for essentially poverty and slave wages with no worker and citizen rights. Does that sound like compassion? Does that sound like good policy? Of course not. It's absolutely insane, and it makes no sense. It's pretty much unjustifiable and indefensible. These elitists in Congress don't care. They're simply doing the bidding of corporate lobbyist groups who want to benefit from the downward pressure on wages. The more workers, whether legal or not, applying for the same job, and especially those low-skilled jobs, the more competition there is for those jobs, essentially higher demand and the same or lower supply. In other words, they get to pay you less. Downward pressure on wages. It's economics 101. It's not complicated stuff. These sociopathic politicians are unbelievable. There's currently a bill moving through Congress trying to sign into law what's known as E-Verify, which would essentially force bigger companies, and I'm not going to get into the details about what E-Verify is because I'm probably going to make a separate video entirely on the topic, but it would force major companies to essentially verify certain, criterias are being met by employees, one of them being legal citizenship or legal right to work in the country. And as they're writing the bill, there's an amendment that just passed with a bipartisan vote that essentially states that E-Verify, or the verification of citizenship or a work visa, will not apply to agriculture workers. It is in the sense of Congress that in implementing the E-Verify program, the Secretary of Homeland Security shall ensure any adverse impact on the nation's agricultural workforce, operations, food security, and food security are considered and addressed. In other words, let's check for citizenship, let's implement E-Verify, but just not in the field of agriculture. What that says to me is that the ruling class essentially want to keep the system of what I think can only be described as field slaves. It's totally despicable. These people don't care about you, they don't care about your jobs, your wages, your standard of living. They simply pander, and Democrat voters just follow like sheep. Yes, we're doing the right thing. No human is illegal. Blah, blah, blah. But the real impact, you're starting to see it as we're headed to a true border crisis.
We're still talking about 11,000, 10,000. We're talking about more than 30,000 people. From the numbers we have, Jose, imagine that they have to go somewhere, states of emergency in Chicago, New York, here in El Paso. Something's got to give.
And Tom, those numbers we're not including the people that get away, that don't want to be caught by officials. And we're talking about thousands, untold thousands that are crossing in and that don't go through the Puerta 41 and 40.
There's talks and reports of over 10,000 illegal border crossings a day. Those are just the ones that we know of. That's over 300,000 people a month and nearly 4 million a year, possibly to balloon to nearly 5 million a year. And while Texas simply can't absorb it anymore, it's going to start leaking into New York and Chicago and everywhere else. And those living in the least affluent neighborhoods, the ones who are dependent on working class and low-skilled jobs, well, let's just say you're ish out of luck. Welcome to the world of Democrat policies. That's what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Of course, you know that we'd love to have you here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.